The air inside the arena was stagnant, heavy with the predictability that sometimes settles over a championship reign that has gone on just a little too long. In the center of the ring, the current champion stood with a microphone, reciting the usual list of vanquished opponents, her voice echoing off the rafters with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. The crowd was polite, reacting on cue, but the electricity was gone. They were waiting for a commercial break. They were checking their phones. The commentary team was already discussing the main event scheduled for later that night, treating this segment as a formality, a filler block of time that just needed to pass. Then, the lights flickered. Not a blackout, just a stutter. A glitch in the matrix. The champion paused mid-sentence, looking up at the Titantron with a confused scowl, irritated that production had interrupted her moment. The crowd murmured, a low rumble of confusion rippling from the floor seats to the nosebleeds. Was it a technical failure? A power outage? For 3 agonizing seconds, there was absolute silence. No music, no pyrotechnics. Just the hum of the arena ventilation and the confused whispers of 15,000 people realizing that the script had just been thrown out the window. Michael Cole's voice cut through the feed, hesitant and unscripted, asking, "Wait. Are we having audio issues in the truck?" And then the sound hit. It wasn't a generic rock anthem or a synthesized beat. It was a specific, distinct chord that hadn't been heard on Friday nights in years. The recognition was instantaneous. It traveled faster than sound, a wave of realization that hit the front row and exploded outward. The champion's face dropped. Irritation vanished, replaced by a look of genuine, unmasked terror. This wasn't supposed to happen. She wasn't on the roster. She wasn't even in the building. The impossible had just become inevitable. The eruption was primal. It wasn't just cheering. It was a wall of noise so dense it caused the cameras to vibrate on their tripods. As the figure emerged from the smoke at the top of the ramp, the commentary team completely lost their composure. You could hear the headset audio peaking, the sheer disbelief in their voices overriding their training. No, it cannot be. She vowed never to return. "What is she doing here?" shouted the play-by-play announcer, his voice cracking under the strain of the moment. She stood at the top of the stage, not posing, not smiling to the fans. This wasn't a nostalgia tour. This was a hunt. She adjusted her wrist tape, eyes locked dead ahead on the ring, ignoring the thousands of hands reaching out over the barricades just to touch the hem of history. The camera tracked her boots hitting the steel ramp, heavy, rhythmic, purposeful. There was a dangerous aura around her, a controlled intensity that made the current roster feel suddenly small, like children playing dress-up in a house that just got reclaimed by the owner. The fans were losing their minds, jumping on chairs, some with hands over their mouths in shock. Others capturing the moment on shaky phone cameras to prove they were there when the timeline shifted. But she didn't play to them. She walked with the weight of a legacy that had been interrupted, not finished. As she climbed the steel steps, the commentary team shifted from shock to analysis. Realizing the implications, "Do you realize what this means?" Graves whispered, the cynicism gone from his voice. "The hierarchy of this entire division has just been deleted. Everyone we thought was safe, nobody is safe anymore." She wiped her boots on the apron, a ritualistic cleansing before entering the war zone, and stepped between the ropes. The music cut, but the noise from the crowd didn't. Inside the squared circle, the atmosphere changed from a rock concert to a crime scene. The champion, usually so vocal and brash, backed up into the turnbuckle, clutching the title belt against her chest like a shield. The returning legend didn't ask for a microphone. No. She didn't need to cut a promo to explain why she was there. The silence between them was louder than the entrance music had been. She stood in the center of the ring, chest heaving slightly, the adrenaline of the return mixing with the cold focus of a veteran. She slowly walked toward the champion, closing the gap until they were inches apart.
Wow.
The height difference, the posture, the sheer presence, it was a visual storytelling masterpiece. The camera zoomed in tight on their eyes. The champion looked for a producer, looked for a referee, looked for anyone to tell her this was part of the plan. But the returning star just stared, a predatory gaze that stripped away the champion's accolades and left her exposed. "You're in my spot." She didn't say it, but the tilt of her head screamed it. Then, she looked down at the title belt. She reached out, not to take it, but to touch the gold plating with a single finger. The disrespect was palpable. It was a violation of personal space that signaled zero respect for the current reign. The commentary team was hushed, speaking in reverent tones. "Look at the eyes," they noted. "There is no rust here. There is only resentment." The crowd, sensing the violence about to erupt, began a chant that started low and built to a roar, chanting her name, reminding the champion that despite the belt around her waist, she was merely keeping the throne warm. This wasn't a match. It was an eviction notice served on live television. When the segment ended and the cameras cut to commercial, the chaos didn't stop. It migrated. Social media platforms crashed under the weight of the engagement. The clip of her entrance garnered 3 million views in 10 minutes. But the real story was happening behind the curtain. Reports began leaking immediately from dirt sheets and insiders about the mood in the locker room. This wasn't a happy reunion for everyone. The current roster, the women who had been grinding on the road for 300 days a year, suddenly saw their spots on the card vanish. You could feel the tension through the screen when the show returned. Backstage interviewers were scrambling, trying to get a word, but security had already cordoned off her locker room a private dressing room, usually reserved for part-time legends, which only fueled the resentment of the full-time talent. The narrative shifted instantly from welcome back to civil war. We saw glimpses of other superstars watching monitors, arms crossed, faces unreadable. The unspoken politics of wrestling were playing out in real time. Commentary alluded to the phone calls being made, the agent scrambling to rewrite the script for the next month. The return had blown up the carefully laid plans for WrestleMania. The family aspect came into play too. Mentions of her spouse, her connections, and the personal sacrifices she made to be here were brought up, adding layers of emotional weight. This wasn't just a job for her. It was unfinished business that had clearly haunted her during her time away. The media chaos was a firestorm, with major sports outlets breaking the news, proving that she transcended the wrestling bubble. She was a mainstream entity, and her presence made the brand valuable. But it made the locker room a powder keg, waiting for a spark. As the show went off the air, the image that lingered wasn't a finisher or a raised hand. It was her leaving the ring, walking backward up the ramp, never taking her eyes off the champion she had just mentally dismantled. But here's the twist that adds depth to this viral moment. She didn't attack. She didn't hit her finisher. She didn't say a word. By doing nothing but showing up, she did more damage than a steel chair ever could. She proved that her shadow is larger than the champion's spotlight. The twist wasn't physical. It was psychological. She came back not to win a match, but to prove that the division had been stagnant without her. It was a mirror held up to the industry. This return forces us to reflect on the nature of nostalgia versus progress. We cheer for the returning hero because they remind us of a time we loved, but their return is often a tragedy for the new generation trying to carve out their own legacy. The shocking entry wasn't just about the pop or the music. It was a harsh reminder that, in this business, you never truly own your spot. You just lease it until the landlord comes home. The show ended with the champion alone in the ring, holding her belt, looking like the challenger in her own movie. The hierarchy hadn't just changed, it had been exposed. And as the screen faded to black, the question wasn't who will win, but rather did the current era just end tonight?